Hi there, welcome back to Tiff Reads Books. I read books and I talk to you about them. This is my March wrap up. Feels weird to say. I don't feel like it's already been 3 months into the year. Like, we're in a whole new quarter. A lot of stuff has happened, but at the same time, I feel like it's been like a million years since the year started. But March is done, and I read some books. I did manage to read 19 books, which is actually quite a lot. And I feel like I was trying to read less because I was like, I want to spend more time with books. But then the weird thing about being on Instagram in the book space, so Bookstagram, is you get caught up in those like, oh, everyone's reading this, I'm gonna read this, and people are reading that, and I'm gonna read that with my friend, and let's read this, and oh my god, what's next? And I need to slow down. I am a very distractible person. I'm a very encourageable person. So when someone's like, oh my god, you need to read this book, I'm like, hell yeah, let's read that book. So I read a lot. I'm at 50 books for the year so far, which is crazy. So that's a little bit of a quarterly thing. I'm at 50 books, and I will say, while I think manga and graphic novels and novellas and short stories all count as reading and should be counted as a book, there was a lot of manga and short stories and novellas and graphic novels because I find them enjoyable. So, and I do count those, and I think you should count those if you want to. If you don't want to, don't count them. I'm not really trying to hit a goal this year, so it's weird for me to like be talking about the number when I'm like, oh, but the number is there because I use a book tracker. So I pulled some of this stuff out of Storygraph. I'll throw a cute graph up here from Storygraph to show you the, let's do the mood breakdown. Probably going to be, I haven't looked at it yet, Adventurous, Dark, and Tense. Those are my top three that are usually up there. Green, black, and orange, or green, black, and purple. Those are usually what's up there. So, of those 19 books, 2 of them were graphic novels, 5 of them were manga. My hand is down here and I'm like acting like you can see it. 3 novellas, 1 play, 1 short story, and 7 novels. So it's actually quite a bit, even if you are someone who's like, the rest of those don't count. 7 novels. This is a fair amount. That was a total of 2,447 physical pages that I read and 92.08 hours listened. So that was a good chunk. Right. Let's start. I'm going to go through each book and give you a little mini review because I fell way behind on my reviews this month. So I'm going to give you a little mini review, what I thought about the book, and whether I recommend it. So we'll go with those groups that I just mentioned, which I think will be fun. My average this month was 3.86 stars. If you saw my try a chapter, I mentioned that at the beginning. So here's the spread breakdown, either a graph I made in Canva or the one from Storygraph. Whichever one I end up putting in here, because this is the star breakdown. A lot of 4 stars, only a couple of 5 stars. So we'll start with the graphic novels that I read. I did write them down, so I will be referring to this periodically. The first graphic novel I read was actually the first book I read of the month and my first 5-star of the month, and that was Displacement by Kiku Hughes. This talks about the Japanese incarceration camps that were all over the West Coast and into the next few states. I don't know what you call the area Utah is in. Is that the Midwest? I don't know. I know that I am in the Pacific Northwest, and that's about all I know. So my geography is garbage. But it follows the story of Kiku's grandmother and some of the information that she was able to find about her when she was placed in these camps. They've been in the news a lot recently, people discussing them because of other similar related stuff going on in the US that I won't go into, but these camps I learned about in junior high because there was one at the Washington State Fairgrounds, which is around the corner from me, and I learned a little bit about them then, and then more in high school, and then recently, within the last 10 years, George Takei spoke out about them, and more people found out about them, and I did a little bit more research at the time. So this book is a graphic novel that follows the story of her grandmother as she gets placed in a camp in California and then eventually gets moved to one in Utah. And it's kind of Kiku getting shifted back into the past or displaced to then be displaced with her family members, and her learning that story and putting it into the context of the last time that these were in the news. trying not to use buzzwords that will bring the wrong people here. It's really, really good. It's a YA story. I really recommend it. I think it was fascinating and like really well done. The second graphic novel that I read was Monstrous Volume 3, written by Marjorie Liu and illustrated by Sana Takeda. I really like this graphic novel series. The art is stunning, like stunning. I read it on my phone because I get them from my library through Libby, and I don't want to read it on my Kindle because they are full color graphic novels. I need to buy them eventually because reading on my phone, I'm constantly like zooming in to like read. There is a lot more text than I normally like in a graphic novel in here, but the art, it's delicious. It's so good. It's this Japanese kind of Art Deco combination inspiration. I read a couple of articles by interviews that were with Marjorie Liu talking about how her and Sana Takeda worked out the art style to go along with the storyline, and how Marjorie Liu actually, after giving Sana her initial like pitch, Sana drew up some art and Marjorie Liu was like, hold on, I gotta rework my idea because this is to die for. So this follows a young woman, Micah Halfwolf, who is infected by a god and she ends up like losing her arm, and this god kind of moves into her body, and they're in the middle of this war. It's a lot is happening. It's a really big expansive world, and it's really good. It's really dark. That brings us into the manga that I read, which starting off was the 10th, 11th, and 12th volumes of Attack on Titan, which is a continuation of the story. I can't really say too much about it because it spoils everything that happened, but I'm really enjoying the story. I really want to continue with it, trying to read down some things on my shelves that I can go pick it up from the library and just binge it, because the library has the rest of the series and I just want to sit and binge it. So we'll see what happens this month, but I may just go get them and just spend a weekend just devouring this series, because manga tend to read fairly quickly. I can read a manga in an hour because I'm a slow reader, and I tend to spend a lot of time looking at the images. So this essentially is a alternate world where we're in this city with these concentric rings around them to keep out the Titans, and the Titans are these humanoid monsters that are cannibalistic and also will eat humans. But there's something else going on, and our main characters that we're following are essentially Titan hunters that work for the government, and there's a lot of politics within that. There's a lot of backstories of people. We're getting a lot of like backstabbing, and a lot of people aren't what they seem, and it's really well done. And I'm like in it now. I'm like halfway through and I'm in it. Well, I'm not quite halfway through. I'm like a third maybe. Then I read volumes 12 and 13 of Chainsaw Man. So volumes 1 through 11 finish the first arc of the story, which follows Denji, who is down on his luck. He's a teenager. His dad died. He inherited all this debt, and he has to work for these gang members to pay it off. And he eventually makes a pact with the devil, and he becomes Chainsaw Man, and he hunts devils for the government. And it's him following his story. The first arc ends with his story at book 11, ends with the intro to his story, his like big major character development. He is still in the next arc, but it's not focusing on him. We're now following a different character. And I'm not sure that I really like how she's written. So I was kind of mid on these. These were a 3 and a 2.5. I just think there was a lot of fan service. Chainsaw Man goes over the top with the way it depicts things. For example, in the first arc, one of Denji's goals is to touch a boob. Like, that's his goal, because he started off with a goal to be able to eat jam on bread. And then when he got to eat jam on bread, he was like, I want a hug. And then he got a hug, and he was like, what's the next step? And it's supposed to be gratuitous and like silly and not serious and all this stuff. But I think the second one leans into a little too hard. So we'll see how it goes. I'm going to keep reading because there are some funny jokes and stuff in it, but I'm not quite sure. It's not for everyone. I will give it that. It is not for everyone, but I found the first arc entertaining. Okay, so that moves us on to the novellas. The first novella I read was Feed Them Silence by Lee Mandello. This is I gave this one a 3.75. It was doing so well, and then I just didn't like the way that the plot turned. But it is actually fascinating. So if you like morally gray in the terms of scientific ethics, sapphic characters, and it follows a bit of like a slice of life that is like drama, like relationship drama, plus science drama, plus climate change, plus mind melding with a wolf, you'll like this. It sounds like a lot is going on, and a lot kind of is, but it happens very slowly. I just found the main character to not have enough consequences for her actions for me. I love a character that is ethically ambiguous, but I need there to be some consequences in world for that character, and I just think there wasn't enough for the main character, whose name I can't remember right now. But the whole mind melding with a wolf thing was really cool, and I really enjoyed that, and I loved her spiral into instability. I'm going to talk about this novella first, even though in the order it will make sense. So the next novella, not graphic novel. The next novella I'm going to talk about is Fugitive Telemetry by Martha Wells. This is Murderbot number 6, right? This is Murderbot number 6, but it takes place before Murderbot number 5. So it makes sense that I'm talking about it here, because I was so confused when I started listening to it, and I was like, wait a minute. What happened to all that stuff that just happened at the end of book 5? It's because I didn't read the synopsis, and the synopsis tells you that it happens before book 6, or before book 5. So this is technically like in the middle, even though it's published after. So we're following Murderbot, and this is Murderbot plays detective with a government agency. A lot of government agency employees in this little wrap up, but this is Murderbot plays detective, and I found it enjoyable. Murderbot being Murderbot being like, oh, these humans are stupid, but I enjoyed it. It wasn't like a 5 like the other ones, but it was a 4. It was solid. It was good. I enjoyed it. It was funny. It made me laugh. Took me a little bit to like be like, wait, where am I? Like, what's happening? And then once I settled in, I was like, oh, okay, this is fine. This is good. This novella is a nonfiction novella, so a short nonfiction. Because it's not a novella really, but it's a short nonfiction. This was The Moral Basis of Democracy by Eleanor Roosevelt. So she wrote this short book in 1940, and it is so disconcerting how timely it is. And I'm gonna leave it at that. I recommend it. I listened to it on audio. It was like 2 hours and something minutes, so it was a good listen. It's really well read. All the points that she made should not be timely 85 years later, but here we are. There was a lot of like echoes of none of us are free until we're not free until all of us are free type of stuff. Commentary on the treatment of non-white people in our society, commentary on the treatment of women in our society, commentary on how those things maybe overlap, which I was like, wow, 1940. And also the concern of what could happen to democracy that is happening right now. So a good listen, a good short read. It's not very long. I recommend it. Okay, the play. I reread Macbeth. I haven't read it since I was in high school, and I reread it, and I had such a good time. I sat in my room, and I read the first half of it, and then I was like, you know what, let's break out some cider. And I just like sat in my bed, I had a couple ciders. I was like chatting with people in my stories and Instagram as I was reading it, and I was like translating things into like millennial like as I was reading it, because it made me laugh. It's cringy, I don't care. It made me laugh. I was having a great time. I got one of these books that has a modern day translation, even though that was from like 1975 or 1980 or something. A modern day translation on one side and the words on the other, so that you could kind of cross-reference the two. But I had a wonderful time reading it, and I recommend doing that if you like any of the Shakespeare plays or you read any of them in high school. Just grab one and reread it. It was so much fun. I read a short story, which if you watched my Try chapter, you saw my review on it already. I read The Projector by Larkin Bryne, maybe? Bryne. Larkin Bryn. I don't know. It's a kind of literary horror that is a liminal space, and everything happens very quick. It's only 15 pages, and it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I think it was fascinating and creepy and eerie, and I recommend it. That brings us into the novels. So we'll start with the 5-star. So if you're curious, here's the 5-star. It was The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. I listened to this. I absolutely loved it. I got way too emotional. I think this might be one of the ones where I said, no, that was I Keep My Exoskeletons to Myself, that I said 1 star for every time I cried. But I definitely cried at least 5 times in this book. Like, got teary. Like, I didn't like sob. I just like felt like the prickling. All of which when I was driving, of course. So this follows 3 sisters and kind of their reunion of relationship, and then their fight. It's basically like, what if the suffragettes but witches? And it just felt really timely. It's very hard to talk about this very briefly, but it was definitely dealing with the impact of sexism and misogyny and racism in a society that has the takeover by someone who doesn't want any of that, like anyone who is different than them. And what if that person had powers? And what if that person was actually a very old witch with a lot of power and was able to manipulate society? And while that may kind of seem like it trivializes and makes it seem that these people are like, that are doing these things aren't actually human, that they're like way more like powerful and all this stuff, it still felt really emotional to listen to it. I really enjoyed it. I think Alex E. Harrow is a wonderful writer. Woman Eating by Claire Coda was the next audiobook that I listened to. I gave that one a 3.5. It just wasn't for me. It just felt too slow. This is a vampire story, but it's kind of different. Our main character is an artist. She's a performing artist and a vampire, and her mother has just gone into like a memory care home. Her mother is also a vampire. She's trying to figure out how to exist in a world where she doesn't have her mother with her to help her. There's like kind of her relationship with her mother was toxic, but not in like the same way as like Night's Edge by Liz Kieran, where that's like an abusive vampire mother. This one was very much I guess it could be abusive in a different way. There was a lot of ED rep in this, I think. The main character would do things like see how long she could go without feeding and put her body through that. And some of that I was like having flashbacks to my early 20s and I was like, well, that's a little rough. And that might have definitely like skewed kind of my view on it. I didn't really feel like triggered by it because of the way it was discussing it, but at the same time I was like, this is kind of resonating with something with me. But I just felt like it was like building and building and building and building, and then nothing ever happened. And I think that's kind of what put me off. Like I did appreciate the ending, but I think it wasn't the ending I wanted it to be building towards. I don't know, it was not for me. It was very literary and a little less like fantasy. Then Jade Legacy. So this is the last book in the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee. I did sit there and go, how do I feel about this, for a very long time, and ended up giving it a 3.75. Overall, I think that is what I would rate the series. I have a lot of thoughts about this, and I did start writing it tonight finally, but I'm like, what am I gonna do with this review? So I'm trying to figure out how I want to do that. So the short review is that the last book, what can I say that's not a spoiler? The last book covers 20 years. It covers 20 years in the span of like 750 pages or something like that. There's a lot of big time jumps, and the way the time jumps bothered me is because it would be like, here's a big thing that happens with this character, end. 6 months later. We never got to see them work through it. We never got to see the resolution. We never got, like, we saw the resolution, but we never got to see them working towards the resolution. We, like, it was like, oh my God, this big thing happened with this character and he was so shocked. 6 months later, that had all been put behind them. And I was like, what? I told one of my friends that I started thinking of it of the narrator as outside of the story, as like some sort of benevolent god who was like, here's my little playthings and here's what they're doing. And the god falls asleep at the most inopportune times and then wakes up and's like, what are my little humans doing? That's kind of how I was like coping with the way the story was being told. I think it was Mara from Books Like Woe that was like, the narration is very tell heavy and not very show heavy. And yeah. So I couldn't sink into it. I don't think Jade City was like that, because Jade City was like a 5. But Jade Legacy and Jade War was worse. I like on the narration style, the time jumps and all that stuff. I think Jade Legacy was a little bit easier because I was ready for it, because so much had happened in Jade War with the time jumps. But still, Jade War only covers maybe 5 years, not 20 years. Also, I really hate Hilo. And I know that's an uncommon statement. I just really hate Hilo. Ali Hazelwood, Deep End. This is my second Ali Hazelwood. I didn't hate either of them, but I also didn't love them. I am very millennial, okay? I was born in 1987. I am very millennial. I find her humor funny because it is my humor. It's dumb millennial humor. I find it funny. Do I think 22-year-olds talk like that? Absolutely the fuck not. And maybe she should start writing characters that are a little bit older. I do also start to question her credentials as an academic, because this man in 3 years got his MD and his PhD in 3 years, which feels very short. Like, very short. So I was like, hold on, what? So it's probably unfair of me, but I was like very confused. I have a longer review on it. You can watch it. It was fine. I tried to judge it within the genre and not on my own like standards. So, but then again, I don't know, because I don't really read romance. So it was fine. I didn't hate it. I liked the way consent was dealt with. It was fine. Network Effect. So this is Murderbot number 5, but happens after 6. This was a novel, and this one took me a little longer to sink into, because I was like, the pacing was so different than the novellas. Following Murderbot, and Murderbot has to deal with some interpersonal relationships, which Murderbot doesn't really like doing, but I did like how everything was handled. Murderbot had to deal with a teenager, and I felt that I have a teenage nephew, and I felt it. So I enjoyed it. It was a 4. It was fine. Like, I mean, it wasn't like, oh my god, best Murderbot book, but it was good. I enjoyed it. I had fun with it. It made me laugh. I was like ready to continue on with that story. Angels Before Man by Raphael Nicholas. This is a self-published queer retelling of the fall of Satan. I gave this a 4. I enjoyed it. It was really like about all the events leading up to it, and like the author has rewritten it in that Lucifer fell in love with Michael, and that is what caused the war in heaven and caused Lucifer to want more. But also Lucifer was created always wanting more, always questioning, and that was unusual for the angels. And it resulted in the war in heaven and Lucifer being cast out. As someone with religious trauma who grew up in the church, I really kind of identified with Lucifer constantly being like, but why? But why? But why? And are you really powerful, or you just say you are? And are you really good, or are you good because you say you're good? And I was like, oh, Lucifer, don't ask that. You're gonna get in trouble. Like, that was like me throughout. I was like, you're gonna get in trouble. You're gonna get in trouble. Like, and of course he does. That's the story. But yeah, so I enjoyed it. I listened to it and read it at the same time. The book is physically stunning. The audio narration was really good. I enjoyed it. I'll probably reread it eventually, just to kind of sit with it a little bit longer, because I read it as a buddy read and read it a little quickly. But I'll probably like reread it and sit with it a little bit longer. But I did enjoy it. I do recommend it. And I read The Cretaceous Past by Shijin Liu. so good. I didn't expect it. I gave this a 3.75, but it could be a 4. This is a alternate history. This was fantasy, because this was an alternate history where, what if dinosaurs and ants had a symbiotic community? Like, what if that happened? What if dinosaurs evolved in a way that they had like a whole culture and they like spoke and they had science and nuclear weapons, and ants also helped them with everything, and ants had their own technology and like anti-nuclear stuff? And what if, because dinosaurs can't touch their hands together, so what if ants did all of the like wiring for them? Like, I was listening to it and I was like posting in my stories like as things were happening, and I was like, oh no, the dinosaurs and the ants have both discovered monotheism at the same time. Like, it was like things like that. It was really fun in a kind of non-serious but also like serious way. I think audiobook is a good way to listen to it. It was kind of done in that older style fantasy where the narrator is outside the story telling you what's happening. And yes, I know how ironic this sounds, considering I did not like it when the Greenbone Saga did that. But this was different because you weren't really supposed to connect with the character because you spanned thousands of years. It was just, let me tell you the story of. And so we never got like characters' thoughts or feelings on things. We just got like what they said and how they acted. And I think we did get some thoughts, I guess, actually. But it was about the society. I think the way it was done was a little bit different. There was never anything about interpersonal relationships. I never learned which ants were married to which and how they fell in love and how many kids they had. And I think that made it different from like the Greenbone Saga, where like if it had just been like, I don't know, man. I'm making shit up at this point. So that's the 19 books I read. I tried to do it quickly, but here we are. So I'm going to end that here because I need to go to the grocery store and get the dog a greenie because I forgot I ran out. So, and it's 10 o'clock, so I gotta go do that because he gets his nighttime greenie and I like hide it in a blanket and he gets to go find it, and then that's how he brushes his teeth and we go to bed. He's like patiently, he's very tired today, so he's like sleeping. So I'm gonna go do that. But I will tell you, I'm currently reading The Oleander Sword on audio. I'm 70% through it and loving it. Obsessed. And I also started The Sword of Kaigen. I'm only like 7% in. I was going to read today, but I ran a ton of errands and I bought a bunch of classics today. So I'm going to show you my little stack. And now I get to add books to my list that was going down because I was down to only 47 unread owned books. And now we're going to add these. Though this one's probably a gift because, I mean, just look how pretty it is. I got it. I'm probably going to give it to my friend. Let's see. I have to put it by my face so it'll focus. But isn't it pretty? It's so pretty. So anyway, that's what I did today. I will talk to you soon with something else. Thanks for sticking around.